Hello, Steeler fans. Welcome to the Curtain Call podcast. I'm your host, Geoffrey Benedict. With me, as always, Shannon White. Shannon, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. It's just raining and it's going to rain all week. And there's flooding going on and everything. But where I live, I don't have to worry about flooding. But it's just really wet right now. So it's good to be inside talking Steeler football.
You know what? It's good to have something new to talk about. We're talking about this event. We've been in the deadest part of the offseason. Now we have the great part of the season that is football in shorts. It may not mean much, but it means a lot more than what we've been talking about. With someone said something on a podcast. Somebody said something over here. Someone posted something on Instagram. I'll take football in shorts over any of that all day long.
Definitely.
You all right, Shannon?
Yes.
Okay. For our show today, for everyone listening to our show today, we are talking about training camp. We're going to talk about reactions to the start of training camp. And we're going to talk about our expectations, what we think needs to happen, or in my case, at least, I'm willing to say I have demands that I'm making of the Pittsburgh Steelers for this training camp. So, Shannon, I want to give you the chance to start this. What is one thing you heard, saw, read about today that got you excited about the Steelers' first day of training camp?
Oh, that's a tough one just to pick one. Because, all day long.
We'll get into more later, but just pick one to start.
All day long, it was just like, if anybody did anything, you have to pump it up. So you're reading it, and you'll read. I think it's funny. You could read 3 or 4 tweets from different people, and they all describe it, but it might be just a little different. Somebody might see something a little different. But one of the clips I saw was a pass along the right sidelines in one-on-one coverage to George Pickens, and he had that daggone bubble thing on his helmet. But I understand that's a safety requirement. But he, even with that on, and I know it's just shorts, but he leaps in the air, catches the ball, completes the 360, lands and runs on into the end zone. The body control was immaculate. That's Lynn Swan type plays and catches.
Yep.
And for body control for a guy 6'3" and 210 or whatever he is, that is incredible. So that really got my juices flowing. Yes.
That is I mean, who doesn't get excited about that? For me, I'm gonna take Calvin Austin III breaking a screen pass for 61 yards. He said Gunnar Olszewski threw him a block, and it freed him up. And he said, anytime I see grass, I'm going to get there as fast as I possibly can.
Bye-bye.
And he was gone. That, and you take those two.
Yeah.
Right? You take Calvin Austin III, you take George Pickens. That's where a lot of excitement for this year's Steelers passing game comes from. Like, we don't have Ben Roethlisberger anymore. And as much as we talk about the limitations of the offense, the offensive line, and what he was able to do with that team last year, that's still a loss. But to have exciting new weapons, to have as many potential weapons out there on the field, even a young quarterback like Kenny Pickett's going to be able to find somebody who's open to make a play.
Did you hear, I think it was, might have been Nick, who said that lots of motion, crossers, just so much focus on the center of the field, and guys coming open, and stuff that they didn't even practice or do even in this situation with me, because he really didn't want to have any part of it, and it was just something he allowed to happen before the play started, so then he could do what he wanted to do. So that's exciting, because they said that Claypool was playing out of the slot some. That's exciting. And then, again, Fairmute. So, I anytime I hear about that middle of the field, that gets me going. George Pickens, deep threat, body control. And like you said, CA3, you miss, a guy slips, he breaks the tackle, and it's over.
Yep.
I mean, when's the last time the Steelers had that? So, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and the middle of the field attack, you talk about guys that are going to help that. A guy like Pickens is going to open that up. If you go back to last season, it's not hard to remember all the times Ben is just throwing lobs to the sideline, like out of bounds half the time. Other times, like, and Claypool's he's just throwing a prayer. Like, you don't, I broke it down in my one film room. If you've got 2.5 seconds to throw that ball, you can see where to put it. You can see if the guy's getting open or not. When you're throwing it at 2 seconds, when you're throwing even at 2.2 seconds, which was his average throw time last season, you're throwing up a prayer. You're like, well, it's 1-on-1. Let's see if he can win it and get to the spot where the ball is, because you don't know how's the hand fighting going. Is he got to slow up and work through the guy? You don't know yet, and you already got to get rid of the ball. It doesn't work. If the Steelers can get that going outside, you open up the middle of the field. If the Steelers can get the outside zone run game going, it opens up the middle of the field. They got the tools and the ability to do it, and that will be very exciting if they can force open the middle of the field and then attack it.
I think they went back 5 years, and Ben had 3 of the top 5 fastest, quickest getting rid of the ball, and last year he was by far the quickest, and again, because he had to, 3-step drop, heaving a prayer. That was it. You can't tell if a guy's beating his guy to the inside or the outside. You can't tell. Like you said, if you hold it for another half second, stuff opens up. And so, like you said, it was too many heaves and a prayer out of bounds. And you say, well, you have to do that to try to keep the defense honest. But when they see you complete 1 out of 4, it don't scare nobody.
Yeah. No, nobody was. And you look at our stats for our offense. It got so much better when people would put a second deep safety in there. If you went cover 1 against the Steelers, you shut them down because you got everybody in the middle of the field. There's no reason to defend the outside of the field. The short passing game was slants, ins and out. Like, you're going to get a steady diet of 5-yard out routes. Okay, we'll take that. Like, that's actually not an easy throw to make, and our cornerbacks can sit on that. And if you take that away, then you're pushing everything to the middle of the field where all the defenders in the world were last season. I want to ask you real quick. I'm bringing the guy up. They added a player. Steelers have a new player on the roster, running back Jeremy McNichols. I've been working with Dave Schofield on a Vertex about this guy, but I just wanted to know if you had any thoughts on him at all, Shannon.
Just from, kind of evaluating him a little bit before games when the Steelers have played the Titans. Honestly, I didn't remember him being in the NFL before he was with Tennessee, but he did so little with those other teams. It didn't, that's why I hadn't really heard about him. When I thought about him, I thought he was still with the Titans. I didn't even know he signed with the Falcons in early part of free agency, but he's a elusive little guy, and he can really take some of that third down, work off of Harris. And they said today, again, it's, without pads, but they said he held up good picking up the blitz. And, if he's smart and he'll put that effort in there, throw his body in there, with the additional mobility this year at the quarterback position, he could be a help, because they're going to have to take some of the snaps off Harris.
Oh, absolutely. And really, I was looking back and I was trying to think of the third down backs, right? The stereotypical receiving back who pass blocker and receiver more than a runner. And I'm going back and I was thinking, and I went back to Mewelde Moore. And I'm trying to think if the Steelers have had anyone since Mewelde Moore that was really a good third down back. I know Isaac Redmond played that for a bit with Jonathan Dwyer, and I think it was 2012 season, right before they drafted Le'Veon Bell. But they mostly just mixed it up. Like, this guy might be the best pure third down back the Steelers have had since Mewelde Moore. I'm going to put Mewelde Moore ahead of him because Mewelde Moore had some years of an actual starter. But I think he's
what was Pegram? I seem to remember, huh?
Eric Pickering, that's a long time ago, man.
Yeah, but I mean, I was trying to think of anybody that fit that description.
Yeah.
There's very, very few. But
Mhm.
Melody Moore was the class act there, definitely.
Oh yeah, he was a really good one. He was a really good one. McNichols is really number 2 on that list because the Steelers haven't had many.
Mm-hmm.
Right, Le'Veon. I mean, you weren't going to take Le'Veon Bell off the field on 3rd down.
No,
That was like that's his best down. Like, you're not doing that. But yeah, like, this guy could be that player, and I think that's a big boost to getting Najee Harris some rest, some extra snaps off. And at that point, maybe you can run 1 series, maybe 2 a game with Benny Snell, and you've got Najee Harris down to a good number of snaps and carries.
But I didn't really dive into it, but you have been for the Vertex. Does he offer anything on special teams?
I have not looked at him on special teams on film, and he didn't play it a ton. I know when they like, he's not a returner. He's definitely not a returner.
No. But see,
Snell played special teams, but not.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd have to actually look at film, but that's not something you hear about, and that's not something people talk about with him. He's definitely not like a special teams ace. He's not. I wouldn't put him with like Benny Snell even, because Benny Snell, you'll hear he plays a lot of special teams. He does a lot. He's actually shows up on special teams quite a bit. I wouldn't expect that from McNichols,
but don't
in the same way that we didn't see that with Anthony McFarland.
I think that, because McFarland has the potential to return punts.
Yeah.
Now, whether they have so many good returners, I don't see that. But he doesn't offer much on coverage teams, whereas that's Snell's bread and butter is in coverage. So I'm wondering if that gives Snell a leg up in that competition.
Yeah, I just looked it up to make sure, because I looked it up before, but I was trying to remember. He did not play much special teams after like his first year. So he hasn't been much of a special teams player. More like if other guys are out, then he'll play a little bit where he's needed. I think you're right on that with Snell sticking around, and I think this kind of spells an end to a guy like an Anthony McFarland, where really, if you're not the number 2 guy right behind Najee Harris, and you're not a special teams guy, and you're not really a receiving back, you're not really a good blocker, where are you fitting on this team?
I mean, and Nichols is proven production. He's done it, and McFarland hasn't been able to stay healthy and hasn't been effective when he has been in there. Again, a lot of that's the offensive line, but I think it really could spell trouble for McFarland.
Yeah. To wrap up the running backs, do you think I'll phrase it this way: the addition of Jeremy McNichols, are you okay with this running back room being the room week 1 and through the season? Are you okay with that now, with just the addition of Jeremy McNichols as a 3rd down back?
Yeah, because you don't want to. If you bring anybody in who, let's say, would be a former starter, and it could be a fill-in starter if something was to happen to Harris, it could be another Melvin Ingram situation, that they're not going to be happy with the limited amount of touches they get on a weekly basis, because Harris is too good to bring out very much. You want to maybe knock 8 to 10 touches off of him a game versus what he did last year. That would be ideal. So you need a guy who is an accomplished backup who accepts being a backup. So some of the guys that people have talked about, like Johnson, and there was another guy that I can't think of his name now, but all them guys I think would want more touches. They'd want more of a 60-40 split, and that ain't going to happen in Pittsburgh.
That's not going to happen here. You're absolutely right. That's not going to be a thing here. I'm also cool with it. I'm like, you know what? That guy added, Benny Snell here can take a few reps. I mean, there were some times he came in and the Steelers didn't immediately punt. Right? there were a few there. But I also want to, with this, bring up Pat Meyer. Because one of the things I jumped on early when they hired him, and I've kind of let it go since then, but I feel like I've underplayed it, is every time Pat Meyer has gone to a team, he's gone there almost exclusively to teams with one really good rusher, right?
Mhm.
Who had way too many carries. They bring in Pat Meyer. He brings in his style of offense. He brings in stuff, and you see a significant drop-off in the number of touches that number one running back gets when Pat Meyer joins that team. You see a significant drop-off, but in every case, you had a guy going to the Pro Bowl. Pat Meyer joins the team. He touches the ball up to 20% fewer times in a season, still makes the Pro Bowl. And oftentimes, if he had a lot of those carries would go to a quick running back, a guy who did jet sweeps and did a lot of other stuff. It with the Steelers, I think you're going to see a lot of those carries go to Chase Claypool, go to even like inside the little shovel passes, stuff like that to people. You're going to see ways to manufacture runs that aren't reliant on the running back. And you may see more from wide receivers. You may see some from Calvin Austin III. I mean, Chase Claypool was 2 yards behind Benny Snell last year in rushing. He had 96 yards. Benny Snell had 98. That was for our number 2 rusher last year. Didn't even have 100 yards. Didn't even have 100 yards. And also, every time this guy goes to a team, the quarterback sets records for their most rushing yards. Almost every single time this guy goes to a team, the quarterback rushes more than he did in the past. That's one of the reasons they brought him there to the Carolina Panthers, was to keep, to drop Christian McCaffrey's workload. And he shows up there and Christian McCaffrey gets hurt right away anyways on a kind of a fluky play, and he doesn't get to work with him. But that's something I think we need to consider there too, is that a Jeremy McNichols is going to take him off the field for third down stuff, for obvious passing situations like end of the quarter, end of the half drives. You're going to see Najee leave the field unless it's a key play where you want him as that extra threat as a receiver, because you give the ball in that man's hands, he's incredible.
But did you see Najee? I think it was the first day when they reported. He said, admittedly, there was times that he was really, really tired.
Yeah.
And, he probably should have came off the field, but he looked at his effectiveness dropped, significantly when he looked back and he realized, well, I was really exhausted at this point. That's when you need to say, hey, I'm tapping out for a second, and you need to have a quality guy that you can bring in. If the Steelers can be more effective on offense this year, be more versatile, have some design bootlegs and rollouts, and get some of the rushing yardage from the quarterback. Whoever that number 2 is, running back, the backup, if he can get high 200s, 300 yards on the season, that bodes well. As you said, that's something that's been consistent in Meyer's tenure everywhere he's been. That bodes well for the Steelers.
Absolutely. And I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Yeah, I think it's great. I think Najee Harris, I think a big deal is Najee Harris in that talk showed a willingness to put himself on the bench. And that's huge when you think of a running back who wants those carries, wants those yards, wants those touchdowns, wants that production, because that's your money. That's where you get your money. That's where you get your career. You want the ball. For them to have gotten to him, and I don't even doubt that the Steelers put together like a presentation and was like, look, Najee, this is why we want to give you fewer carries. And we want you on board with it, right? Where Najee could look at it and have that and say, you know what? Yeah, for the good of the team, I'm going to need to know when it's time to take myself out. Like TJ Watt does. TJ Watt, well, you see him. He'll take himself off the field, get a breather, come back on. You got to do that for the good of the team.
Hey, there it is. 2 words that come to mind when you hear that from a young second-year guy is leadership and team first. Maybe that's 2 words, but you know what I'm saying. Leadership and team first.
and I know you read it. I wrote an article about Ben Roethlisberger's comments, and what struck me with those comments was that the team lacked that kind of what I'm going to call a team first enforcer, not a lead, just a leader who puts the team first, but a leader who goes and checks other guys when they start getting more me first and is effective at that. And that's not just something you can be. We saw that when Ryan Clark retired and Troy Polamalu was supposed to be the leader of the defense. He wasn't that guy. Troy was never that guy. Troy was always soft-spoken. Troy's not going to get in your face and tell you, hey, you need to back the team and put yourself second. Sometimes you need a guy that can get in people's face and do that. Guys like Jerome Bettis was that guy for the Steelers. James Ferrier, Ryan Clark have been that guy. Cameron Hayward comes over and says, hey, young guy, you'll get yours when the team wins. Like, put your ego on your back and let's go team first here. You're going to listen. You see that with TJ Watt and Minka Fitzpatrick backing it up, but take a Minka Fitzpatrick. You listen to him talk. He's not going to be that guy. He's not going to, he's a great leader, great in the film room. Everyone loves him on the field. He's making sure everyone's in the right spot, but you put him in, he's not going to go up to someone and chew him out. He doesn't have that kind of personality. And I think the Steelers finding a Najee Harris, who everyone loves, and who has that, I think he can be that kind of leader that the Steelers have needed for a while and haven't had.
You said in your article, and it was pinpoint, there was nobody to put for Antonio Brown to listen when he was losing his mind on the sidelines. You had, I think it was Darius Hayward Bay maybe that come over and tried to talk to him when he's throwing Gatorade coolers around, but he didn't respect him.
Yeah.
Pouncey come over later, but it had already started to cool down. The damage had been done. There was nobody on that offense that could put certain people in line and hold them accountable. And even Cameron Hayward, I think Cameron Hayward is at a point now that he would go to an offensive guy and say, listen, son, that ain't how we do things. But at that point, AB's the biggest star and wide receiver in the league, and Hayward is still on his way up.
Yeah.
So people got to think about that. A lot of times your leaders, there has to be a certain respect factor. They've had to earn it, with Pro Bowls, All Pros, And so I don't think there was anybody really there that had a prayer of getting him in line. If Tomlin couldn't, and nobody was going to.
And especially, and one of the things I haven't been able to get into in these articles because they tend to be long, is when you have a player like an AB who has a problem, Ben Roethlisberger is the guy he kind of has a problem with. It's like, you should have thrown me the ball there.
Yeah.
And Ben's like, well, I was following the play. Ben can't be the guy who also goes there and says, hey, AB, you need to get along with me. I'm your quarterback. You need someone else who can go there and be like, AB, dude, chill. Like, get along with your quarterback. Get things going. You'll be fine. Ben can't be that third party.
Has to be somebody else.
When he's already inside of it. And I think that was a problem. And you see that with the receivers. The receivers are where, when we talk about me first, Le'Veon Bell, yeah, he's in that. But mostly it's that receiver room. And Ben was never the guy who kept that receiver room in check. And to this day, it strikes me that the big problems with the receiver started in 2012. The first year Hines Ward was not in that room.
Yeah.
Whereas before that, you had Hines. You got a Super Bowl MVP guy, that's right there. You listen when he talks.
Well, that was the timeline. I mean, it was obvious when it changed. That, the young money and all that. But I know we want to talk about what's going on at camp. But did you see?
I know we've gotten way off topic.
Did you see what Cameron Hayward said about what Ben said today?
I did not.
He was like, he disagreed with Ben. He said it bothered him. Now, he said he had all the respect for Ben's accomplishments and he understood what Ben was saying, but that he didn't think that the me first was the problem that Ben was making it out to be. And he tried to show that leadership today. And, he didn't say he didn't badmouth Ben or nothing, which I didn't think Ben was badmouthing anybody either. He give his honest assessment and Cam give his honest assessment. He disagreed with it. That shows the leadership. And there's no doubt that Cam Hayward is the leader on that team now. So
absolutely. And I think the reason we got into the whole leadership discussion is Najee Harris is showing that he can be the guy to step up and be that leader for a young offense where not many people have he's one of the younger guys, but not by much.
No.
Not by much. And he can be that kind of a leader.
They're all young.
They're all. Everyone across that offense is young. It's crazy.
Yeah.
All right. We've talked about wide receivers now, so let's talk about the wide receivers at camp. Notably, one guy who took a page from TJ Watt's playbook and did not participate in team activities. I want to be clear on this. Deontay Johnson did take part in individual exercises, but did not take part in team exercises. Shannon, what do you think of Deontay Johnson? I think they're calling it a hold-in is the new terminology.
Yeah.
What do you think of Deontay Johnson at camp?
I understand. I can see both sides. And I think that the precedent was set last year with TJ Watt. I've actually got an article coming out about this subject when I've seen that, Deontay Johnson is doing a holdout or holding in or however you want to say it. But it's a different situation in that me and you talked a little before the show. TJ Watt, value over replacement player. Watt's the best defender in the world. He's the best edge player in the NFL. That deal was going to get done. They just had to fine tune it and, punch the numbers and make it work where everybody was happy. But it was going to get done because you're talking about the best in the NFL at his position. It's a different situation with Deontay Johnson in that with a replacement player, I think he'd match or even exceed what I think his numbers could be this year. And a couple of guys on his own team.
Yeah.
So, this is another Hines Ward, Plaxico Burress situation that the Steelers are going to pick one or the other between Deontay Johnson and Claypool is what I think is going to happen. Because I think Claypool is going to have a really good season in the slot. And I think Johnson will have more explosive plays and not have to do all them 5-yard, get open in under 2 seconds. But I don't think he'll see the overall targets he did before because he has Pickens, CA3, maybe Boykin. There's so much more talent now, and there's going to be competition for those targets. So I don't think that Johnson is in the same position. He doesn't have the same leverage that Watt had. And I hope that this will be rectified quickly. He said he'd like to stay in Pittsburgh.
Yep.
If him and his agent would approach the Steelers and say, hey, 16, 17 million a year, and he can, the Steelers feel like that's fair market value, they might pull the trigger. But if it's the 20 plus that some guys have gotten and then reportedly, that he's should be in that range, then I think the Steelers will pass.
I'm starting to come to the idea that with the way receivers are taken off with their paychecks, the way receiver money is just exploding, I think you're going to find it hard for a team to have both a top wide receiver and a top quarterback on the same offense and be a good team. Because you're going to be eating so much of that. And you see that with Kansas City where they had to let Tyreek Hill go. And Tyreek Hill ends up, the Dolphins?
Yes.
He's with, where they're not paying a quarterback yet. They got a young guy. And I think that's what you're going to see is you're going to see top wide receivers go to teams with very young quarterbacks that need that. Like a team sitting there saying, we don't have that go-to guy. Say a team that should have signed a big name wide receiver, Chicago Bears. You got a young quarterback. You got nobody else. Bring in somebody this guy can rely on, somebody this guy can throw to when he's in trouble. That kind of a situation makes sense. But if you've got good players, you got good other wide receivers, why are you going to pay one guy a ton of money and have to let maybe 2 or 3 guys walk because of that? It doesn't make sense to me. I don't think the Steelers are going to come to terms with Deontay Johnson. I could be wrong. Like you said, if it's a lower number, that could work. And people might remember this. last year, TJ Watt eventually went to his agent and was like, look, the numbers they're given are good enough. Just sign it.
Yeah. He
Like,
wanted
I
it
get
over.
that you're fighting for me to be like, not just the highest paid, but like up another rung, but take what's there. I want this done. And that's what it took. Deontay Johnson might have to do the same kind of situation for an agent who wants to be able to tell other wide receiver clients, hey, I got this much for Deontay. I can get that much for you. It may take Deontay Johnson coming and saying, hey, just take that offer. And we'll see if that happens. We'll see how that happens. And we'll see. I think it's much more likely that the Steelers and Deontay Johnson are farther apart on where they think their values are than where TJ Watt and the Steelers were. It was never a question of TJ Watt getting the most money. Like, that was never the question. It was how much, but by how much is he going to have the most money? With Deontay Johnson, that could be a big gap.
Well, if Harris, I know he's on the rookie 5-year deal, but if he turns out to be what we think he can be after year 3, they might want to look at restructuring. He might have earned it, and that's how they like to do a lot of times.
Yeah.
You have Claypool. If he can have the big year in the slot and, with the mobile quarterback and really show what he's worth, he's going to be going. Freiermuth is not got a 5-year contract. He's got a 4-year contract. So if he explodes, there is so many talented guys on that offense that, and we're not even talking about if any of the offensive linemen or they have to go out and sign a high-priced tackle. Let's say that Moore doesn't pan out like they hope, or Okorafor doesn't improve. You might have to pay. Right now they got the most expensive defense and the cheapest offense. That in the past it didn't work. We had it the opposite. Sometimes you got to be kind of closer to in the middle. So that everybody said, well, it don't matter. They got money. Well, they do right now because of the quarterback situation. But that won't last forever either. Hopefully not. Hopefully they find him a next franchise guy. And they're paying more, a higher market. So, yeah, it's I just don't see it working out with him unless he, like you say, says, okay, I'm okay with 17 mil.
Yeah. I'm okay with taking that offer. It's a good offer. Yeah. Yeah, I can see that too. One thing I found interesting, when the Steelers were in team drills, they don't have Deontay Johnson out there. He's sitting out. When they went 3 wide receivers, it was Chase Claypool, George Pickens, and Cody White. And when they went 2 wide receivers, they took George Pickens off the field. The guys on the field, when they only had 2 receivers on the field for their team drills, it was Chase Claypool and Cody White. And that was surprising to me. That was not who I would expect. I would have put him behind guys like Anthony Miller even, and behind George Pickens and Calvin Austin III. And even maybe Miles Boykin. Like, I would have put him behind those guys, but he was right there, number 2 behind Deontay Johnson for that position. Is that anything you can read into at this point of the offseason, Shannon?
I would only say that he has more experience than the other guys in the offense. So
on the Steelers, he's been here longer.
So when they're trying to get, they're actually trying to install Canada's offense now. And so they are more familiar with the offense than even the quarterbacks are, other than Rudolph. So they probably wanted to have him out there. Because if it's on early downs, you think it would be Claypool and Pickens or Claypool and Boykin because for the run blocking. Because both of them are superior run blockers than what I've seen out of Cody White. But me and you talked about before we started the show, Cody White's nickname amongst his teammates is the GOAT. And I've heard that twice now. And I've looked back trying to find out why his nickname is the GOAT. Because, greatest of all time, when usually that's reserved for when you're talking about your Tom Brady's, Jerry Rice, you know what I'm saying. So if anybody out there, our listeners, have any idea why they call Cody White the GOAT or where that nickname came from, I'd love to hear it. because
absolutely.
I'm not saying it, but maybe he's going to surprise us all this year.
You said that, I looked it up. Okay, in 2021, this is a good point on how much change there has been in this wide receiver room. In 2021, Cody White was 6th in receiving yards among wide receivers. 10th among everybody, but he was 6th among wide receivers with 33 yards.
Oh, God.
Yeah, 33 yards receiving. Of players currently on the Steelers roster, do you know where he ranks as far as wide receiver yards as a Pittsburgh Steeler on the current roster?
At receiver?
Yeah.
I'm going to say third.
Last year, he was 6th alone last year.
I'd say third.
He's 3rd.
Yeah.
It's Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, Cody White, with a grand total of 33 yards as a Pittsburgh Steeler. That is your 3rd highest receiving total as a Steeler in that wide receiver
room. I think it was on like 6 catches. So that's terrible.
Yeah. And I think Anthony Miller has like 1 catch and he's 4th.
Yeah.
There's that much changeover.
Oh, yeah.
On this receiver room that Cody White is, when Deontay Johnson sits, Cody White is number 2 in wide receiver yards as a Steeler with 33.
Yeah.
That is incredible to me. This brand new receiver group, brand new team. My goodness, what amount of change.
And like you was talking about, Pickens had a monster first day. I mean, just almost made 2 circus catches and almost had 3. And the ball came loose when he hit the ground. Then you was talking about Rudolph hitting CA3 with a little dump off, a little running back screen, and then zip 61 yards, he's gone. I'm just not used to that. I mean, the Steelers have been a bad screen team forever. I don't even, and so now you got guys that can take it to the house. So, and that's going to create, we're talking about getting less touches for Harris. All that is going to keep drives alive, extend drives, and having other guys produce and contribute. And, so you might not have to take him off the field very often because he won't be getting hit 2 yards in the backfield every time. See, that'll take a lot of that wear and tear off.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk about one other thing with these receivers, because you brought up that you saw stuff about it where they were using rugby balls in drills, and the first time through a drill, they would be catching rugby balls. And this is incredible because we have had people who write for our site and do podcasts talk about they should have them practice catching rugby balls. And I never took them seriously. Maddie, I think it would have been Maddie who was saying that.
Yeah.
And from Steelers Touchdown Under. And then all of a sudden, the Steelers are doing it. I thought that was I was like, no, that's not a thing. That's not going to help you learn to catch. And the Steelers are out there. First time through a drill, they're throwing rugby balls. And then the second time, they're throwing footballs. And Shannon, you said that it looked like it was working.
They said they had 1 drop. When they switched through the whole drill, there was 1 drop. And you said that it was Anthony Miller who brought the rugby ball.
Yeah.
And he'd been working with training in the offseason, and they used the rugby ball. So it helped improve this because, the rugby ball's bigger and heavier. So, I mean, it sounds like a great idea. And if it works, hey.
If it works, you know what? Maybe that coach listened to Touchdown, or maybe listened to Maddie. And oh my goodness, maybe listen to them ranting about it. It took me back. When I heard that story, all I could think of was elementary basketball when they broke out those medicine balls, and I was like the scrawniest kid in the world, and I had to catch those things. Multiple times I was knocked over by medicine balls trying to catch them because I was so small compared to all the other kids trying to play basketball. I'm just absolutely stunned that this is a thing the Steelers are doing, and that all of the players liked it. George Pickens gave that drill credit for one of his big catches he made downfield, where he was like, yeah, I like the way I used my hands was how I had to adjust to catch a rugby ball because it came harder. And so it's harder to catch and you have to catch it a little differently. And he's like, that's how I caught that ball. And I'm just looking at that going, oh my gosh, poor fourth grade Geoffrey Benedict sitting there with those medicine balls, tucking him right in the chest and just wanting nothing more than to go home and be done playing sports altogether.
But I think that at some point, I think it was OBJ, Odell Beckham Jr., when he made that one-handed catch, then it seemed like every receiver wanted to make one-handed catches. Even when they could have stretched and got two hands on the ball, they start, because that gets the oohs and the ahs. You don't do that with a rugby ball.
No.
So you really have to focus on your form. So I think that was a good drill. I really do.
I love it. And this is the kind of stuff we get to talk about right now too. Yes. This is the kind of stuff we get to talk about. And speaking about one-handed catches, another player I want to bring up is Minka Fitzpatrick, who is at camp, who was out on the field, but is listed with a non-football injury from falling off a bicycle while on vacation, and apparently has a little bit of soreness.
Yeah.
They didn't say which wrist, but he was out on the field catching with his left hand. So it's pretty obvious his right hand, his right wrist is a little sore.
Yeah.
And they were out there. There was a clip of him. They're just throwing him the ball and he's catching it one-handed with his left hand. And he caught probably 7 or 8 straight. I was shocked. You throw me a tennis ball, I couldn't catch it with my left hand.
And I don't know if you've seen, I was reading that they was talking about Connor Hayward that was lined up, I guess, I don't know if he was in the slot or out wide, and said he torched the guy that was covering him, said that the guy couldn't believe, his 10-yard, that he had that kind of burst. And he got right behind the defense because he shocked them. Because if you look at him, you don't expect that. But I think he is more athletic, not just versatile and well-rounded, but I think he's more athletic than people give him credit for. And I think he's going to shock a lot of people. But, they said he looked good. And for a player that looks like him is not a freak athlete, for him to stand out to where people notice in the very first practice, that's good.
Yeah. That's good. And he hits people too. So if he's got that quickness he can hit you, the thought of him coming up towards the stem of his route and just going full tilt at somebody and then just turning it into him and chucking him onto the ground because it's a run play as they're starting to backpedal thinking, I might get beat here. And then boom, you're just on the ground. I want to see it. I'm looking forward to it. That's the stuff of Steeler fans' hearts right there. I can't wait to see him on backs on backers, ends on tight ends on defensive ends, all the stuff. Tomlin's already said he's going to match him up with Cam. So,
that's a mismatch. That's a mismatch.
and hey, if he puts Connor Hayward blocking Cam Hayward, who you don't want to be is the guy who gets Connor Hayward after that.
Afterwards, yes.
After his brother just kicked his butt, you don't want to be the guy who has to face him when he's looking to get back.
Yeah, but make Cam cover him. That'll make it fair. Make Cam cover him.
Hey, Cam led the team. He tied Akella Witherspoon for passes defended last year with 9. Yeah. I mean, he might, don't underestimate Cam Hayward.
He's great, but I don't know if he can cover Connor.
Oh, man. And speaking of Cameron Hayward, one of my favorite moments from not today, but yesterday when they were reporting, Cameron Hayward's walking. He's got his Ohio State shirt on. He's walking up there, and all of a sudden you hear Tomlin's voice calling to him. You hear, hey, old man. And Cameron Hayward looks up to where Tomlin is, and it's like, I can't remember exactly what he said, but something like, I know you're not talking to me.
Yeah.
Well, he's like, come find me when you need me, and then just turns and walks off. I was like, I loved it because it was like, Tomlin is so great at just riling players up and getting them in that sore point and really working them to get them fired up for practice. And he's already, Cam's bringing his luggage into the building and Tomlin's already on him. I loved it. Absolutely
Cam's
loved
got
it.
Ben's old dorm room.
Really?
Yeah. And Thomas said he used to like to stop by Ben's room because he had it decked out. He spared no expense. He said Cameron is a throwback. He's like a caveman. He don't have nothing in there. So he was joking about it. It wasn't no fun to go by Cam's room now.
That's awesome. I had not seen that. Oh,
you
man,
said that Mark Robertson. See, I was trying to find anything about Mark Robertson.
Yes.
Because I know when the helmets go on, he's going to be the talk of the camp. You watch. But I said, I ain't going to hear nothing about him today. But you said you did.
Yeah, it was someone made a comment of one of the running backs went out and they threw a pass to him and Mark Robinson defended, and they were like, and they just made the comment that he made a good play on it, and I was like, well, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. And that's fascinating to me because that is the one area where you're able to pinpoint with Mark Robinson in college and say he was bad, legitimately bad, to the point that you have to wonder if an NFL team can even put him on the field, even have him on the roster, and the chance that if you have to put him on the field, he can't cover. And then first day of training camp, makes the play in coverage. It's only one.
But hey, Shannon, it's a start. It's a start.
Shannon, where are you on Mark Robinson right now?
I'm a believer, baby. I'm a believer. I was hitting it, and I still am. So,
all right. So I want to do this. We were going to do expectations. That kind of fell through. We just got going. We were talking about all kinds of different stuff here, but I want to get one. I want to ask you this, and if you want me to, I'll go first. But one thing you think the Steelers have to do this training camp, or one thing that you have to see from the Steelers this training camp, what would it be?
One thing.
Yeah.
Well, my thing all offseason, I think the key, without Ben and without the clutch factor, is time of possession. So to be able to achieve time of possession, they have the talent and all the skill position players. The offensive line has to improve to at least average. And if they do that, they'll be able to create a lot of third and short where they can convert and have a lot of options with the mobility at quarterback, Harris, and all the additional receiving talent. If the offensive line can hold up their end of the market. That's been the huge weakness for 3 years. So the offensive line is the key. I think it needs to be settled as early at camp as it can be on a starting five. I do not think Kendrick Green should be competing with Dotson for left guard. I just don't see it. I think Dotson will win that pretty handily when the pads go on and everything. So, yeah, for me, it has to be that offensive line. One good bit of news, some of the people were talking about Daniels, and they said that's a full-grown man. That he just looked better than everybody else. You could just tell that he is hitting his prime and he's ready to take off. And not just the leadership, but I think on the field he is going to be by far their best lineman. So I was glad to hear that today. That just the way he carried himself, the way he went through the drills, that he stood out.
Yeah. You brought up Kendrick Green. I want to bring up that a couple of reports I saw. One was when they came out with the first team offensive line, there were 6 players, and they had Kevin Dotson and Kendrick Green both there. So they had 6 when they did the first line drills. There were 6 of them, Kendrick Green and Kevin Dotson, both out there. The second thing I want to say is that Kendrick Green did not do any snaps at center. He did no center work, which looks to say he is a guard. And the Steelers have no interest in putting him back at center or seeing if he can work on it and improve. Maybe that'll change throughout, but in day one, to react to day one, no center work for Kendrick Green. The guy is a guard. And I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know. We'll see, though. Maybe that's what he needs. And he could pull a Kelvin Beachum, and be that guy that surprises you. And you're always like, yeah, but how is he that good? And hey, maybe Kendrick Green can be that guy. Who knows? We'll have to see. My one thing, that's a great one to say, that the offensive line coming together, the offensive line performance is absolutely killer. So key for this Steelers team to do. The one thing I want to see, the one thing I absolutely need to see from the Steelers is a commitment to the outside zone run game. Absolutely need to see it. I've got an article, and I'm putting the finishing touches on it. That's just one of my short little film rooms talking about the outside run game and Matt Canada's offense. The Steelers could not run outside zone in 2021. They couldn't do it. And and there's so many things in Matt Canada's offense that play off the ability to run outside zone. Because the minute you start to run like you're blocking outside zone, the defenders know they have to get outside you, right? That if they don't win that outside and they let the offensive line win that outside, then they've lost the play. And there's so much you can counter off of that because of how strongly the defense has to react to outside zone blocking if you can do it well. That you can do little play, you can do counter direction things off of it that really are hard to defend. Matt Canada does those plays really well. I want to see the Steelers executing, working on, and bringing the outside zone run game into their offense. I know I'm parodying KT Smith. He's also very high on that. I'm right there with him. That is so big to everything, to not everything, but to a lot of the things that Matt Canada does that are really good, especially those little shovel passes. If you can run outside zone, you run that tight end back the other way, you got defend. They don't know which direction to go. And it's just so hard to defend that. They need to see that. I need to see that commitment. I need to see the execution. So we're both going offensive line. I'm going over specifically there. You're going, you want to see them to come together, be a unit. I want to see specifically the Steelers commit to that outside zone technique. Let's hope we get it. That's the thing. We're talking all the stuff we can see right now. None of it's about the offensive line. The offensive line doesn't show up for a while and really, show what they can do for quite a bit. We'll see. Hopefully
it was the Achilles heel. And it can't be anymore.
Yeah. All right, Shannon, what do you have coming up? Let the people know.
I've actually got an article. I started it today when I seen that Deontay Johnson was doing the holding in, taking a page out of TJ's playbook from last year. So just talking about, there's a difference in saying somebody's worthless and saying they're not worth it. So that's pretty much the basis of the article. So keep an eye out for it. And I would like to take this opportunity to wish my son Cameron a happy 23rd birthday, and just to say how proud that his mother and I are of him. And I said, well, I want to use this platform to wish him a happy birthday. So
absolutely. Happy birthday, Cameron. I want to say I've got the Vertex I mentioned on Jeremy McNichols coming up, that collab with Dave Schofield that is one of my favorite articles I do. Watch for Matt Canada and the outside zone and why that works so well, and how the Steelers really need to put that back in their game. That's both of those are coming up. I think all my Training Camp Confidential stuff was out. If you missed the Training Camp Confidential, go to the website. There's links to click on there. There's a whole bunch of articles. Shannon has some. I have some. Whole bunch of stuff to get you caught up on everything Steelers related right before training camp, heading into it, get you a nice place of where the Steelers are right now. Make sure you go over to BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, check out the Training Camp Confidential. Make sure you're checking out all the shows on Behind the Steel Curtain's family of podcasts. Wherever you're listening to this, you can listen to the rest of them. So make sure you're clicking and checking out those episodes. As always, thank you so much for listening. Thank you to everyone in our live chat. We're getting a bunch of birthday wishes for Cameron. Thanks for those.
Guys. Thanks.
And as always, have a great week, and let's go Steelers.